I guess I'll start off real quick without an intro because that leads into my first question I was going to ask you is if you don't actually win uh, this year, uh, would you be thinking of running again for governor or any other type of local office?
Yeah, so governor, it would depend. I kind of have some things in the back of my mind, like what it would take to do that, because I'm a big believer in localization. So I think it's far more likely that I may run for something like my local town commission, or town or county commission or something like that. I think it's probably one where I think the math favors libertarians more than a statewide race. Um, but going through this, right, a contested primary and then going into this, I have learned a lot, right? So there are definitely some lessons learned where to go into 2028, I'm like, oh, I know what we could do differently and do a lot better. So the question is really going to come down to, one of the things that I look at, I have probably one of the largest teams of libertarians running for a campaign in North Carolina state history. And like all credit to my amazing team. My campaign manager, Kim Acker, is amazing. And, the reality is I think we have 50, 60 people working the team, which is great to have 50, 60 people who came up. We're not paying, it's all volunteer. But the reality is we're competing with a Republican and Democrat Party that are paying people 20, 25, $30 an hour to go do those things. So I would either need to do it again as a guy who believes that politics should be mostly driven locally and that most of our wins can come locally. I would have to really see, that blow up tenfold, right? Instead of having 50 volunteers, can we get 500 volunteers?
Yeah.
Could we get some kind of network to make a difference? Because I'm very confident at this point in the race, um, that I will by far have the lowest cost per vote of any of the five candidates, including Wayne and everybody, and Vinny. Although I don't know how much they're spending, I spent very little, and I think that we're probably going to do pretty well. So it's going to become, how do we scale that, right? I'm a math numbers guy. So I would say, okay, if we're able to punch above our weight as far as spending dollars against the uniparty, can we put something together? Because I don't want, here we're going out, I think if I can set the record for libertarians, break 5% for a governor race, I think that that's possibly attainable. But it's a long-term movement. So the question is, can we go from 5% to 10%? To
Yeah.
20%. Like those are the kind of growths, because when you start hitting that 10, 15%, I'm very pragmatic, right? Where winning is the goal, right? We can obviously go there. But if Mark Robinson and Josh Stein like adopted half of my platform each, I would take that as a win, right? We're moving the direction towards liberty. Like the whole goal of politics should be to have control over the way politics influences our life. And if we could accomplish the end result of more liberty and more prosperity, like I don't have to be the guy at the top saying, give me credit for this, right? Like I just want life to get better for North Carolinians. Um, so I think, if we can pull 5% or 10% this time, who knows? No way to really know the polling. I'll have a much better sense a little bit later, um, next month. But if we're able to do that, I think come 2028, if we're putting things on the platform that are what I would argue as a libertarian are common sense solutions to make lives better for North Carolinians, and if they saw that that resonated in 2024, if we have the staff, some better funding, things like that, where we're able to scare the uniparty into thinking, hey, this libertarian might get 10 or 15% of the vote, I think that what we'll see is the Republican and Democrat Party attempting to bend towards liberty, whether it's the truth or BS will yet to be seen. But if mainstream parties are making public policy positions to win over libertarian votes, to me, that's a win based on the 50-year history of the party, right? Because
Yeah.
they've largely just been able to ignore us, rack up the almost 36 trillion in debt now, and largely just ignore those of us who have been adamantly pressing for less government and especially less centralized federal and state government. So that's kind of what it would take to get me into 2028. In the meantime, right, that's so far away. There's local elections in my town and my county next year. I would love to take that and, one, uh, put to rest some of the what I argue are uninformed claims that libertarians can't win. You hear a lot of that, obviously, running for a race at the level that I'm running at. But the reality is, local races are winnable based on who's out there working in their community. I have friends locally that are Republicans, Democrats, unaffiliated, libertarian, and I know darn well that they know me well enough that even if they disagree with me on some things, that they can trust me in that position. So that's probably what I would do next. And then it's going to come down to 2028. I'd kind of put it out there. Hey, how big of a volunteer team can we get? How much fundraising can we do? How can we avoid all of these pitfalls that we kind of ran into the first time around? But then I'd really kind of have to be looking at, if I'm working in either my town or my county as a public servant, working on liberty issues in my community, then it becomes, do I put that aside to run for governor again in 2028? Because I think, having a strong libertarian governor candidate, I do think is important. Whether that has to be me or whether there's a lot of great libertarians. I don't necessarily know if that's the right role for me if I'm actively serving in my local government, but I won't write it off. And I think a lot of it will really depend on how bad is the government, right? If the government keeps getting worse and there's no one there to stand up and push a liberty message and try to move the needle in the direction of liberty. It's something I care about. I have a 13-year-old. At this point, I'm fighting for my kid because, I'm 42 and retired. I get that I'm incredibly privileged, blessed, however you want to put it. But to be able to do what I want at 42, I know I'm going to be okay. It's my 13-year-old that I worry about. Is he going to have those same opportunities? Is he going to be facing a 60, 70% tax rate on the middle class, making it impossible for him to pursue the American dream? So that's why I think I would, nobly stay in the fight.
Okay. Yeah, to the thing where people are saying like libertarians can't win, I actually experienced some of that at some of the polling sites when putting out like Bob Drack signs.
Yeah.
And there was there were a couple Democrats that have said it to me. There's a couple Republicans that have said it to me. They're just like, well, why don't you just side with one of our parties instead of going third party or independent? Because there's no hope anyways. You might as well just let our two parties do it all. But
and this is, I probably wouldn't delve into this kind of thought process on a regular podcast, but since we're on the Philosophisn't and you kind of like to delve into the philosophical things, I mean, that's something that, I'm a libertarian. I'm the libertarian candidate for governor. I am a partisan. So as much as you hear me kind of rail on partisanship, I am a partisan, right? Especially as a candidate. But I think the reality is I really care about liberty more than the party, right? Like if I said, if someone gave me the philosophical question of, what would you rather have, a strong libertarian party or liberty? And maybe some libertarians would get mad at me for saying this, but I think philosophically, if we could get the policies in line with the Libertarian Party's platform as the mainstream political thought that dominated American and North Carolinian politics, I really don't care what letter is next to that person's name on the ballot. Like, to me, even if the Libertarian Party ceased to exist, and I'm sure there's some libertarians who'll get mad at me, but hopefully you'll hang on long enough for me to bring it back and hammer it home. But even if the Libertarian Party didn't exist, if we had free market Austrian economics as the prevailing economic model for the United States, if we had a government that respected the constitutional and natural rights of all citizens, I wouldn't shed a tear if it was brought to us by some other party. Like, I don't care about the party because it's the party. I care about the party because I view it to be the only political party that is fighting for liberty and what I would argue is the true American spirit, right? That's something that I think, I'm an American. I love my country. And I think that moving it to liberty is more important than party, right? I'd be fine with Democrats ruling like libertarians. I'd be fine with Republicans ruling like libertarians. And I would prefer that over libertarians winning and ruling like Republicans or Democrats,
Yeah,
right? Because to me, that's almost as the party is not even useful if we do get in there and we have candidates who are winning, who are not pushing the Overton window, who are not pushing ideas into the mainstream that will collectively move move the American minds in that direction. Because I think that kind of revival of that original American spirit is what we need, quite frankly.
yeah. Um, so I got a couple questions here for some of the things that I didn't notice on your website or anything like that. So to start off with that is, how do you feel the best way to tackle mental health, like the growing mental health crisis that we have going on right now?
Yeah, I mean that's a big one. Because a lot of our problems that we're seeing, where people want to lump the drug war in, like it's just this drug war problem, but the reality is there's a lot of mental health factors that are leading to that. So I take the approach that like health in general, right? So you've got mental health, physical health. I think that in general, the United States and specifically North Carolina is kind of failing people in both of those areas, both physical health as well as mental health. And I think it comes down to priority. One, we look at the nature of our criminal justice system. It is a very powerful tool to authoritarians to be able to use the law to essentially take people who could otherwise be rehabilitated. So when I think of all of the money we're spending on the war on drugs, where in many cases, there's a lot of reasons that I've seen people, homeless activism is kind of where I got my start. And there's a lot of reasons people can become homeless, right? It's one of it is they could want to, and nobody wants to talk about that. But I can tell you with 100% certainty, there are people in North Carolina, in Gaston County, and probably every other county that are homeless because they want to be. And I think that one of us as a libertarian, you just kind of have to accept that. If that's the lifestyle that someone wants and chooses, you have to accept that, right? The other thing is mental health is a big piece of it. Drug addiction is a piece of it. And the fact that we're spending billions of dollars on enforcement and incarceration tells me we're investing in the wrong desirable outcomes, right? Because I think the desirable outcome is to try to help get people who are either struggling with mental health or addiction or any of those things, try to bring them back to become contributing members of society, right? Help them rebuild their dignity. So I would say, as a libertarian, some will get mad at me because it deals with spending. And I know that the radical libertarians are like, would want me to come out and just say, stop all government spending, right? And I think in the long run, that's probably the optimal solution. But until we have those kind of parallel functions, right? Because if you're not taking someone who is in a mental health crisis or a long-term mental health problem, if you are not trying to give them the tools, resources, treatment, you're never going to solve the problem. You can treat the symptom. If you view, hey, the symptom is I don't want this person who's having mental health episodes out on the street, you can put them in a cage and say that you've solved the problem, but you haven't solved the problem. I want to actually solve the problem. So if we were to say, take those billions of dollars from enforcement, redivert our law enforcement and have them focus exclusively on crimes with victims, right? Because the idea that we're pursuing locking up someone who may be having a mental health episode because they're running around naked in the woods, right? Just to use a crazy example, right? Running around naked in the woods. So we use law enforcement resources to arrest them, put them before a magistrate, put them before a judge, incarcerate them, put them around criminals. I think if we were to pull all of the resources out of the enforcement, it would free up our law enforcement to actually focus on activities where there's a victim. Because the reality is there's victims waiting for justice, right? And any action a law enforcement takes, if you're spending time, money, energy to enforce something where there is no victim, I think you're doing a disservice to those who are actually in need of those services to provide them with justice. So I think if you change that and then you change the focus of where those dollars are deployed. There are, from my work with those who help the homeless, there are psychologists, psychiatrists, mental health professionals who have experience rehabilitating people. I have seen it. I have talked to them. I have had a guy give me a hug and cry on my shoulder and tell me he's 15 years sober. I know it's possible, but I know that throwing a person in a cage will never accomplish that objective. Will 100% of mental health treatment work for 100% of people? Probably not. But why are we spending money on something that we know doesn't work when we could spend money on something that might work?
Yeah.
And I don't want to see the government do it. I would love to see the government not do what they did in Gastonia, right? Where you, because when Pastor Moses was going through all of this that spawned my run, his plan, while he had a bunch of homeless people camping in tents on his private property, the objective was to actually build facilities to have local mental health who either work with Medicaid, Medicare, who can come in and say, hey, we're going to set up a shop where we can meet the people who need the services where they are. Because that's a big challenge in the homeless community. And I think that it broader mental health, one, it's been stigmatized, and I hate to go into identity politics, but I'm just going to say it, because this is the Philosophisn't podcast. I mean, the reality is, I think mental health in men specifically is pretty stigmatized. We're kind of expected culturally to kind of be solid, and I think that that's doing a disservice. And I think that we have to try and break the stigma. So I think having more and more people talking about things is there, but I think the problem is there's competing economic interests. And it's interesting to see some of the things that are coming up. Like I saw RFK talking about it the other day, where he was talking about kind of what's going to happen with the CDC should that coalition end up winning the presidency. We're looking at things like alternative treatments. So there's some early results showing that psychedelic medicine can be wonderful for public health and for mental health. But it has been demonized by the CDC. And it's been demonized by Big Pharma because, if there's some mushrooms that God invented when he created the earth and they've been here, like you can't patent that. And if that works to rehabilitate someone, there's no money in it for Big Pharma. And sadly, that's what I think is driving a lot of our political decisions, is what special interests think they can either accomplish through legislation, cultural change. But I think if we uncap that, we end the drug war, stop the enforcement where we're treating people who are in a mental health crisis like a criminal, right? Like I think we really need to look at that holistically. And I think if we tear down the red tape that prevents alternative treatments, like I've seen really encouraging studies for people with PTSD and other mental health problems with things like psilocybin, ketamine, MDMA. Like there's a lot of psychedelic medicines that are illegal, right? The government will not allow doctors to even pursue clinical trials or for a doctor to tell their patient, hey, I think this could work based on these studies that we're seeing in other countries or other states. I think our regulatory environment is more geared towards upholding the status quo, where Big Pharma can prescribe you a pill that you have to pay and take every single day. And if they can bend the rest of the legislative agenda in a way that ensures not only are they going to guarantee that all of these patients are going to be taking this medicine daily for the rest of their lives, but we're going to write a blank check in the form of having the government pay for it. I think we've set up economic incentives that do not incentivize us actually making a difference in improving people's health and well-being. So
it just kind of creates an incentive to keep it going and just
yeah.
kind of manage it barely.
Yeah, I mean, if you're able to keep this system going where the big hospitals and the big pharmaceutical companies are raking in billions of dollars because competition, right? Whether you think of it as competition or not, but a competing potential therapeutic is banned, right? Because that's what happens when you criminalize psychedelic mushrooms, for example, right? Or ketamine or anything else. If you tear down those barriers to competition, I think what we'll see is we'll see mental health and physical health providers who are going to lean in and try those, where they may have someone who has pharmaceutical resistant depression. There may be some tools that if they could legally tell their clients or patients to try that, they might be able to get good results. But the reality is we have a government that says you're not going to be allowed to find out whether or not this works. And I think that should go away entirely. Which is something on my platform, right? When it comes to controlled substances, I don't think there should be any controlled substances. If a person wants to take a substance, they should have the freedom to do that as long as they're not hurting somebody or taking else's stuff to pursue it.
So, yeah, this one was a pretty big one for me because I know I got a couple friends that have mental health issues. I got a friend that has schizophrenia, and I have a cousin who, or a couple cousins that are former military, and I got one that's still in the army. And I believe one of them at least has PTSD from what they saw. So this one right here with mental health and stuff like that means a lot to me.
Yeah, I mean, I can tell you, I know firsthand. I can think of at least five people that I know personally, that things that were deemed illegal, right? Things that the government told them you cannot have this, they will attribute to saving their life.
Well, I mean,
The
it
the only
it's
way they did
also
it was by breaking the law, but they attribute it to saving their life. And given the choice between breaking the law or having your life, like, yeah, I
yeah.
mean, I'm going to break the law in that case 100 times out of 100.
Well, I mean, it also sucks because it's like the for like the former military too, their mental health isn't taken nearly as serious as it should be, especially when it comes to things like PTSD. Because I know it's been difficult for, and I'll use my cousin as an example. Uh, it's been difficult for her to kind of get what the help that she's needing, and I hear that all the time, like throughout social media, and then like whenever I'm out volunteering for something or something like that, I would at least run into at least one veteran that says it is so difficult for them to get the help that they need. And
Yeah, I mean
it's a
it
sad thing.
is. It's sad. It's really sad that, because I'm very, and it's not a huge issue at the state level, but I'm very libertarian and non-interventionist. I think that the way we treat our troops, where you kind of prey on young people who have this sense of duty and this sense of country and this sense of service, and they like that idea. But the reality in many of these cases is we're, putting them in unconstitutional wars where Congress doesn't declare war, where in many cases it's just propping up the military industrial complex, selling weapons. And, I can have my disagreement with some of the military actions there, but I think where we should all be on the same page, I would hope, is regardless of whether you think, the action in the service is legitimate or not. I think we should all be able to agree that if someone signed up to say, "Hey, I'm going to come work for you. I'm going to put my life on the line, potentially die for the cause, because I believe in this," I do believe that our veterans should be taken care of. That if they're coming back um, with night tremors, and I'm using this as an example because I know someone that has like night terrors and night tremors, who came back from PTSD because of the horrible stuff that they had to see and do out there. I think when they come back, we've kind of prepped them into this war zone mentality. So they come back to serve in the private sector, and largely the military kind of neglects them. And I've seen so many veterans where, I have a buddy. He had to wait like 3 years to get hearing aids because he had damage from an IED that went off close. Like this is an injury in the direct result of your combat service that you've done. The fact that you have to go years of your life without something as basic as your ability to hear clearly. Um, to me, that's a fundamental failure of government. Like it should have been, hey, he comes back. Hey, I need to get hearing aids. I can't see. This bomb blew up in my ear, or I'm sorry, I can't hear. This bomb blew up in my ear. It should be as simple as, well, let's get you hearing aids. These are things that have been around forever. I, it shouldn't take 3.5 years to do that. And that's just one guy's story. And I can tell you there are countless veterans, and it has gotten better. I've seen things that I like, right? Where it used to be that you had to be forced only to go to the VA. And I know some states and places have kind of changed it where it's like, hey, you can go to any doctor you want, and then they can just send the bill to the VA. I think that should be common sense, right? If the VA cannot handle is at capacity and can't see people, I think it's fundamentally immoral to say, oh, we're going to throw our hands up. We don't have the resources. We don't have the ability when there's someone out there who can do it. Because then it's just a matter of, are you really tied to that money having to go to that government hospital or that government doctor? I don't think it should. I think we should be focused on outcomes. And the outcome of the current situation is that we have a lot of veterans who are killing themselves. I think the number's 22 a day. That's sad. Like that is so deeply troubling because I think so many of those lives could be saved if only our government stopped failing the brave men and women who potentially risked everything to do it. So,
Yeah. Well, while we're on a national thing, I was wondering about like, what do you think about Chase Oliver? Because I know within the libertarian community, he's getting a lot of backlash for one thing or another. Um, in my personal opinion, I feel like he's actually a true libertarian because some of the things that he's getting backlash for is because he's refusing to allow the government to step in on certain things, which I believe is like the transgender issue,
sure.
which I mean, he took a true libertarian stance and said that government should not be involved in your health at all. So I
Yeah,
was
so
wondering about your opinion on him.
yeah, I mean this is hop right into to libertarian drama and things. But I told everybody since I started the campaign, look, I'm going to tell you the truth, whether you like me, whether you don't like me. I'll be the first to say Chase was, I was in DC. Chase was not my preferred libertarian candidate. He was not the candidate that I backed. However, as the top of the ticket, anybody who's saying that Chase isn't libertarian, I think is probably not either giving a good faith assessment of what libertarianism is or what Chase is, right? Like there's a couple of things that I disagree with on Chase, as I probably disagree with many libertarians. I don't know
Yeah.
if I don't know if you can get two libertarians to agree that the sky is blue, right? Just because we like to argue on those. And there's some things that I disagree with on Chase. I do think that's not one of them, honestly. Like my two, if I had to look for personal critiques or things that I don't like that Chase put out there. I think his old stance on Ron Paul. I think Ron Paul was a warrior for liberty. I think probably one of the greatest libertarians of my lifetime. So that kind of rubbed me the wrong way. And then his response to COVID, which I get the argument there. I just think that we kind of have a different belief on kind of what really happened, if that makes sense. Where I think he was maybe a little bit lighter on the private vaccine mandates, because I think in principle, right? In principle, I agree with him. That I think, if you had a business, right? Let's say you had a business and you were running a yoga studio and you catered to people who were like really far into the mask wearing, 100% bought all of the propaganda that was being thrown at them. I fully believe that as a private business owner, you should be able to say, you know what, you want to come into my shop? You got to wear a mask. I think that that's a consistent libertarian principle. I think and I think that that's kind of where Chase takes it. I think where Chase and I disagree on this one issue is I kind of try to look at the bigger picture, right? Where I have to ask, well, why is that business requiring vaccine mandates, right? Is it organic? Like, because I say if a private business, like again, in that studio, in that situation, you run a yoga studio, if you wanted to make sure all of your yoga instructors were vaccinated because that's what your clientele would demand, right? I think that you should have the right to do that. And I think that that's where kind of Chase takes that position. I think I just view it differently as far as how that came about. And I think that all of the vaccine mandates that we saw coming out of that, even though they were private vaccine mandates, I call BS on that. The reality is, the way I see it, and I'm open to have my mind changed because that's what a libertarian is. But the way I see it is these companies were simply complying with the government. The government would have wanted a vaccine mandate the same way it wants to shut down speech in many cases. But if the government is blocked by that pesky constitution, I do not believe that them putting pressure and coercion on businesses to get businesses to demand those same actions, I don't view that as legitimate. And I think that we saw a lot of that happen. Like I remember reading letters from companies that went out to their employees like, please get vaccinated. We're trying to comply with this OSHA thing. And like the businesses themselves didn't care if people were vaccinated. They were only doing it because the government did. And I would have loved to see Chase take a little bit of a harder stance on that particular issue. But even though I was not an early Chase supporter, Chase has been busting his butt. He has been running on the LP platform almost exclusively. He's been a great messenger. I think part of it, just looking through national elections. I think this is a very tough year for any libertarian, whether it was Chase or, my number one pick. I think it would have been a tough year either way. We had the RFK factor early on, right? It was drawing from that kind of protest or third party or independent vote, which is now kind of all lumped and rolled into Trump with that alliance, or whatever they have going on. So I think it is a tough year for libertarians, but I think Chase, I couldn't ask for too much more from him. I think he's been a great candidate in running on the platform. I think he's kind of doing the best with what he has, right? There hasn't been a ton of support, right? He hasn't had the budget that Gary Johnson had.
Yeah.
There's been some challenges there. But I have nothing against Chase. There's a few points of disagreement that I have with him. One of which, I just said that, but in those, I've campaigned with Chase. I'm happy to stand by Chase's side. And I think at the end of the day, he's doing it for the right reasons. I think he's trying to grow the party. And I like Chase. I just don't know if it's the year for libertarians at the presidential ticket this year.
Yeah. Yeah.
Regardless of who it was.
Oh, I love Chase.
Yeah.
So, but yeah,
Yeah.
no, I can agree with you on that. But also there's also the disorganization with some of the branches in the Libertarian Party that I've noticed.
We fight a lot for a small party. We agree on like 95% of things, and we'll fight over that last 5%. And
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a problem. And I've always been in North Carolina, because Chase and I, for those people who are maybe in the know of inside baseball of libertarianism, Jason and I come from separate factions, right? Within the factionalism, we were actually on opposing factions, so to speak, coming from there.
Oh, the different caucuses.
Yeah, from
Yeah.
within caucus support, right? We were supposedly on different factions, but North Carolina is great. I think North Carolina has a wonderful autonomous libertarian party in our state. We don't really care what national says, even in our caucuses. I don't think the caucuses care what the national caucuses say. And we have a unity, really a unity party. We have all caucuses working together. So while in other states, maybe there's hate for caucuses or all this stuff, none of that exists in North Carolina. We're an open tent libertarian party in this state. And honestly, there's some Libertarian Party state affiliates that I'm like, yeah, I probably wouldn't be a libertarian if that was the or I probably wouldn't be a party member if I lived in that state. But I'm very happy with the North Carolina Libertarian Party. I think we do well to work together within the factions. When all of that was happening, there was some ugly that brewed up for a little bit, but I think largely North Carolina showed that unity in the LP is possible. So yeah. I mean, I think Chase is great. I think anybody who was doing the task he did is up for a really unique challenge this year. And there are a couple of policy positions that I do differ from Chase in, and that's okay. I'm sure I've got some positions that he disagrees with too, and that's ultimately where I'd love to see. We're a small third party, even if we don't like a candidate, right? If Chase didn't like me or if I didn't like Chase, there's, to me, just I don't see any value in bashing a candidate unless they are like not a libertarian, right? If Chase was running on, I want to print $10 trillion and give that money to somebody, right? Then I think there would be some valid reasons to say, hey, but all of my points of disagreement with Chase, which, I'm not going to air too much out like in a podcast, but I mean,
Yeah.
at an event, I pulled Chase aside and we had a chat for 25 minutes and said, hey man, I like you on all these things, but these are a couple places that help me understand how you got there. Where are we differing, right? Because I know how we approach things as libertarians, trying to think through. And I think it's all things where I truly think Chase is a benefit to the party. I hope he stays around for the long haul. I hope I see him in future national conventions and yeah, it's just I think it's a tough year nationally. I mean, it's always a tough year statewide, right? But I think I've been given a few gifts this election season that make me optimistic that maybe the ideas of liberty could really grow in North Carolina, and that this could be the state that cracks the code.
Yeah. Well, next election, I hope he decides to run again.
Yeah.
Uh, uh, what are your thoughts on campaign finance reform and reducing money influence in state and federal politics?
Ooh. Yeah. So I mean, it's kind of nuanced, right? Because I think ideologically, um, a person should be able to give as much as they want. I really believe that if someone came along and said, Mike, I believe in you and I'm a billionaire, here's like $5 million to go compete because the Republicans and Democrats have $100 million, right? Um, I think that should be okay, right? Because at the end of the day, who is government to tell someone what they can or can't do with their money, right? Like the same way, I think, and I guess there are probably some laws against like defacing and destroying currency, but if someone had $1 million in cash and they wanted to put it in a pile and light it on fire to provide them heat for the night, like I wouldn't do that, but I don't think the government should be able to tell them not to. I think the bigger problem when it comes to these issues is if you're going to have this, there has to at least be some kind of like fair enforcement, right? Like equality under the law. Because ideologically, I'm an ANCAP, right? But I think as much as we're going to have laws, you have to apply the law equally to everyone. You know, no nuance, no special cases, which is why I rail so hard against government immunity, right? Qualified immunity. Like you are legally creating inequality under the law when you grant immunity to a special class, whether it be a job, a race, a sexual orientation, whatever it may be. I truly believe in equality under the law. So I think if it was equally enforced, that would be a good step. I think money in politics in general, ideologically, I think is a cancer on the American people. I really do. I think it's not in our interest. I just don't know if banning it does anything. I think, yeah, I mean, it's a tough one. You can see me just kind of thinking through here because
Yeah.
there's so many
Well,
like a
because
spider webs off. I'm like, hey, this is a good idea, but anytime you have a good idea, there's conflict between um, will it work? Will it be effective? Are there not, does it solve this problem but create three new problems?
yeah, because
Um, yeah.
in my opinion, with all that though, is uh, I feel like if someone donates a good amount of money, then basically that's them trying to buy that politician. So I feel like if money can't be gotten rid of in politics,
Yeah.
then I feel like the donors that donate should be known sponsored and like it should be public information that this person donated this much to this person. They've done this in the past.
Which it is. It all is public record. All political donations are
Well,
public record. You
what
just
I'm
have to look
saying,
for it.
yeah, I was gonna say it should be more well known. Like it should,
Yeah.
like they should tell us about that.
Right. Yeah, like they should have their pins, Boeing, Raytheon when they go up there to
Yeah,
speak, like they do in NASCAR, right?
yeah. Oh yeah, that would be cool. Just a jacket with it on
Just the
them.
jacket with all the sponsors. Yeah, I mean, I,
Um,
I don't I don't know how you fix it because I think the reality of human nature, right? Like the reality of human nature, I think is if someone thinks that they can make $5 million by spending $1 million on a politician, I think that the incentive exists to do that. And I think even if you make it illegal, right, and you have some kind of really strict shutdown of this, if that incentive still exists, whether it's legal or illegal, someone will do it. Maybe it goes from like 100% of the people that we have donating now to like only 10% that are willing to break the law. But where I see it is if economic incentives exist, someone's going to pursue those economic incentives. Like when you look at the drug war, it creates an economic incentive. So we have the fentanyl crisis that we have now. If there was no war on drugs, we wouldn't have a fentanyl crisis. And I know it's counterintuitive, but you see all these stories of a kid who like goes and buys an oxy and it turns out it's fentanyl. One, that's fraud. right? I mean, it's fraud. If I'm telling you that this is an apple and it's an orange, I've defrauded you, right? So if you're putting fentanyl in something and saying it's something else, um, that's a fraud issue and a poisoning issue, I would argue as well. But that wouldn't happen unless there was a black market. If you completely did away with that and that person wanted to get their oxy and they go to CVS, like CVS is not going to put fentanyl in the oxys because they're going to get sued out of existence if they did. Um, so what happens is you say no one can buy this. Well, if people want something, whether it's illegal or legal,
They're going to find a
they're
way.
going to pursue it. So the question becomes, who is incentivized to provide this? Well, the only incentive is people who are willing to break the law. So by creating that black market, you have created a market out of thin air for the worst people to profit.
That's how they become rich too, because they can jack up the prices. Because where else are you going to get it?
Yeah, I mean, just look at what happens with the data of with what the drug cartels were doing back in the 70s, right? 70s and 80s, they were moving a lot of marijuana, right? A lot of marijuana. I remember, the brick bud that would come in as someone who, um, but that largely went away. We've seen so much in the decriminalization of cannabis that became a much harder market to compete in. Because if someone is in the United States already and they're capable of growing a plant or manufacturing a product, whatever it may be, right off the bat, you're saving transportation costs, right? Like just right off the bat, the cost of getting this product from China to the United States, from Mexico to the United States, from anywhere to the United States, you immediately created an economic benefit for home production, right? So I think we saw that in cannabis, which is why a lot of those same cartels that were running cannabis through the 70s and 80s and had shifted to cocaine. And now a lot of that revenue is actually coming in the form of fentanyl and human smuggling, right? So you've given them decades of a black market that they were able to capitalize on. And when you finally took those steps to attack the profits of that black market, right? Because if you take a black market and you turn it into a white market, the economics of it are going to shift. There's new players that come into the game. They have to compete. So what happened is we've largely chipped away partially at the black market on cannabis through states either legalizing, decriminalizing, or the rise of hemp, allowing people to operate in the loophole area. But we've largely taken away their exclusive ability to profit from that black market. The problem is we created all these other black markets, so it's just a matter of diversifying to another product. Where I say we need to go after the entire structure of what they could use and try to bankrupt them. I hate to say that, but like try to bankrupt the cartels. But as long as you give them a black market where they can access the market and there are no competitors, we know what happens when there are only a few players in a market and there's no competition. The money is going to go to those few players that are in the market. And that's kind of the racket I see in the legalization movements with cannabis, right? Where they're granting a few licenses to a few people, and those 10 or 15 or 20 farmers that get the license are going to get rich. They're going to
Yeah.
get rich because they don't have competition. And I think that competition is good for people objectively. Like competition is good for society.
That's
So
it.
that's kind of my thoughts there is I think we could do away with it, but you have to take away the black market. If they have a black market to operate in, they will have low level people who they view as expendable, who take on all the actual risk of the smuggling. Even if you lose it, they'll write it off. Oh, 1 out of 4 of our shipments is getting busted. Well, we'll just adjust our prices on the 3 that are getting through. Like that, those things are all adaptable. So I think that if you truly want those things to go away, you have to cut off the funding for the black markets and then actually counter the narrative, right? Like, how do we actually get it so that people stop seeking opiates, stop seeking fentanyl? And that's kind of rolling back to earlier. That's where the mental health treatment comes in, right? So we use these profits where, you tell CVS, hey, you can sell whatever substances you want, no prescription, whatever, just sell it to whoever wants it. And if they implemented some kind of tax on something like that, where instead of it going to whatever slush fund politicians want to use, you put a mandate on it. Hey, taxes associated with this particular thing have to go to treatment of the underlying
Yeah.
issue, right? So if all of the taxes that were derived from drug sales, right? If you legalize drug, if all of that was used in an efficient way to provide drug counseling, therapy, mental health, I think that within 10 years, the problem would improve. I don't know if it would disappear. I think that people have been using mind-altering substances for various reasons since the dawn of humanity. As soon as we figured out, oh, this plant makes you see God if you eat it, I'm sure people started doing it recreationally then, and I don't know if it ever went away. And I don't know if it ever will go away, but I think if we can get better outcomes, that's how we can improve society.
One thing that I like to use as an example for that actually is the Prohibition era. I mean, when they enacted that and said no more alcohol, that gave rise to different gangs, and alcohol was very expensive, and it just made people rich, and that's where all the violence came from. So then as soon as they took away prohibition, then we just saw it basically decline drastically and then almost pretty much disappear.
Well, it's funny. You have to think, right? Like, I think the cartels love prohibition of drugs and love the fact that we have a drug war, even though it means some of their foot soldiers get killed, some of their shipments get intercepted. Because, just put yourself in the shoes, right? You're Al Capone, and the government is thinking through this topic of prohibition. And if you just put yourself in Al Capone's shoes, what would you lobby for? Would you lobby for prohibition or against prohibition of alcohol if you were Al Capone? If
Yeah,
I put myself in Al Capone's shoes, I would love prohibition. I would vote and bribe for
because
politicians
that's what made him rich.
because that's what's going to make me miss. So you're telling me no one else can legally do this, and the only people that I have to compete with are other people who, like me, are willing to break the law. Great, you just cut out 90% of my competition. You show me any
Oh
business
yeah.
owner who would not be ecstatic if the government said 90% of your competitors can't compete with you. And that's why I wonder, with the current crisis, like, I would not be surprised if any cartel members who happen to be U.S. citizens are going to vote with all their power to continue the war on drugs, because it's not rocket science. Like, it's not rocket science. It's counterintuitive, and it goes against kind of mainstream conventional thought. But the idea that you legalize drugs, who does that hurt? Like, that's the question. No one, everyone thinks it's so scary to legalize drug, but you ask, who does it hurt? And I can name a few stakeholders who it definitely hurts economically. It's definitely going to hurt the cartels, without question. The cartels will have to compete. I think it's going to hurt lawyers, and we all know that politicians seem to love lawyers because all of those minor cases, they're revenue generators for lawyers, and it ultimately helps the system, the government itself, the system. It creates this whole new process for us to take people who have, in many cases, have never victimized anyone, get them into the prison system where they're now working for almost slave wages, right? Oh, you're going to be out in 20 years, but hey, if you go work for $1.25 an hour, we'll let you out in 10. Like, that's the most coercive thing in the world, and to me is akin to slavery. Like, it's one thing if you put someone in there, but like if you're saying, hey, you go work for pennies on the dollar, and we're coercing you with, hey, we'll give you your freedom early.
I've
It,
seen
it's
I've seen some
problematic.
articles where they were talking about though too, to where you're talking about the prison labor, where some places it's like the highest is like 75 cents, not even a full dollar.
I was being generous. Yeah, it's really it's slave wages is what it comes
Yeah,
down to. And it's coercive slave wages. Because I mean, the way I see it is, if someone wants to go work for 75 cents an hour, I fully believe they should have the right to do that. And I truly believe that the optimal minimum wage, as far as law goes, should be zero, which I know is kind of crazy, but that's what the real minimum wage is anyway. If you crank the minimum wage up too high, the second that job becomes replaceable with robots or any other alternative, well, now that job doesn't exist. So that person is making $0 an hour,
well,
even if minimum wage is 20 or $30 an hour.
Well, that would all, if we did away with the minimum wage, that would also open it up to competition because then at some point they'd even go over the current minimum wage because they're trying to compete with their competitors to get workers.
Well, it
So
touches on something that touches on something that I think I talked about in our last podcast earlier on in the season, right? Where in 1971, when they pulled us off the gold standard, to me, that was the biggest crime against the people of America because we're having this conversation in 2024 about the minimum wage. And I'm sorry for looking down, but I'm looking for a number that changes daily, right? So let me look this up real quick of
well, actually,
the melt value of a 1964 quarter because in 1964 the minimum wage was $1.25, 5 quarters. But at the time, our quarters were 90% silver. Okay, and the melt value of a 1964 quarter is over $6 right now.
ooh,
So if we still had sound money, and if we use $6 times the 5 coins, that's $30 if we just had that. So we no change to the minimum wage. If we just still had sound money, the minimum wage in 1964 of $1.25 in today's money is $30. Now, some would see that and say, oh, we need to make the minimum wage $30 so that it kept pace with inflation. And I say, no, you've gone the wrong direction. We need to get back to having money that's actually worth something so that if someone wants to make that decision to save instead of spend, that they're actually retaining value. Because right now, the worst thing anybody can do is like put money under a mattress. You're guaranteeing a loss every single year.
yeah.
Every trillion that the government prints, your money is worth less, which is incentivizing not holding on to your money and not having savings, which is why we have this situation where I think the last time I checked, it was like 50% of Americans couldn't handle an unexpected $1,000 expense. That is horrifying to me.
Yeah,
Like
actually,
that's horrifying to me.
I had a, I think it was like $300 because I had to get four new tires because I had hit a pothole
Yeah.
headed home and it dented the rim and popped the tire. And next thing I know, it's like I'm sitting there scrolling through my bank account, looking at my credit card. I'm like, can I even afford to get a new tire?
Yeah. And the cost of
Uh,
tires now is ridiculous too, even compared to like 20 years ago. Like it's the cost
yeah,
of everything. I had to put in a new alternator. And like I have a mechanic friend, so I got a deal on labor. And it was still expensive. And I remember like 20 years ago, like when my first alternator went out on our car, and it was like $150 to fix it with the labor.
yeah.
It was this cheap thing. And now it's like, oh my God, $450. Like
Well,
it's wild to see that. And I think that the really interesting thing is like when you look at the price of the price of goods, right? The aggregate price of goods over time and kind of looking at inflation. And then you just look at the printing of the money, like just look at the money supply. They're so highly correlated, yet there's still politicians out there that want to blame anything but the money printing for inflation. Despite the fact that if you look at the two charts side by side, you probably if they weren't labeled, you probably couldn't identify which one was which because they look so similar, to government debt and prices of goods and services. So, I think returning to sound money, I don't know how we get there at the 36 trillion. I think the Javier Milei approach is worth watching, right? Let's see how that experiment goes. I think early signs are really good in Argentina, despite what the media wants to tell you. When I look at kind of like really real economic indicators and things that make me, make a 10-year prediction on where it would go, I think that Argentina is very much, at least economically, moving in the right direction. Um, there's maybe some other factors that other people may have issues with. Is he too tough on protesters or other things like that? But as a libertarian, it is great to see all of the economic theory actually panning out, so to speak, and
yeah.
coming out against price controls on rent, for example. It's a textbook thing where we say, oh yeah, price controls are bad. Price controls are not going to be good for this. But what did he do? He got rid of price controls and supply went up and prices went down. Imagine that, right? So,
Yeah. Um,
um, it'd be good
Actually,
to see if we do something like that here.
you brought up the gold standard, so I was going to ask, do you think going back to the gold standard would be a good idea, or would moving to something, because I've heard some people discussing about it, uh, and I read an article about it that someone was suggesting instead of going back to the gold standard, and I think also Trump said it, is buying Bitcoin and doing like a crypto standard to back the US dollar.
Yeah, I'm not married to gold. Right. I like gold, even though when I was a professional investment manager for years, had every single one of my clients own gold, own silver. Some years when equity were doing good, they're like, why do we own gold and silver this year? Even though I shut my firm down, any of them that are still in gold and silver are very happy that I had them in gold and silver and
Yeah.
Bitcoin. But I am not married to gold. And I'm not married to crypto. Honestly, how I would do it if I was the dictator in charge of setting up the new currency, I would rather see our money backed by something. I almost don't care what it is. You could give me a diversified mix of gold, silver, Bitcoin, real estate, lumber. I don't care. I just want our money to be backed by something because the idea that our money is truly something that some bureaucrat in a building can push a button on a computer and everything that we have is now worth less is fundamentally immoral to me. So I don't care if it's gold. If we get back to the gold standard, I'm good with it. If we get to the Bitcoin standard and we just use Bitcoin, I'm good with it. Though governments will never do that because they can always try to drill gold or mine gold. There's never going to be more than 21 million Bitcoin. So I don't think governments would ever get into something that they literally could not acquire more of, right? Because it's truly a finite resource at that point. I think governments would resist it. I do think if Bitcoin was the standard, I think that would actually be a really good thing because there is no inflating the supply, right?
Well,
Like a government could find a new gold reserve somewhere and dig that out of the ground, which it probably wouldn't be governments doing it, but it might be. I'd probably rather see a basket, right? I don't even need to centrally plan the basket, but gold, silver, oil, Bitcoin, real estate, forest, just back our money by something of real value, something tangible. If we had that, some form of sound money, like I just want sound money. I don't even care. I don't even care how sound it is or what makes it sound. I just want sound money, and I would take any sound money over the status quo. I do think you give me that magic wand and the central planner. I do think that for people and for liberty, that Bitcoin probably would be the best standard strictly because it is a finite resource. Once those 21 million coins exist, there will never be any more. So you completely remove the ability of the governments to inflate in any way. They can never make more of it. So I do like Bitcoin, but I'm not married to it. And I understand that a Bitcoin standard would actually cause probably some problems, especially in the short term. So where I am now, I would probably lean towards a diversified basket of hard assets, whether it's gold, silver, platinum, Bitcoin, a little bit of all of the above. I don't care. I just want our money to be sound and backed by something, so that people who make good financial decisions can be rewarded, instead of punished.
okay. Um, Actually, there's a question that I've been asked a few times while out canvassing is voter ID. Are you in favor, against, or do you not really mind? Because uh like right now, currently in North Carolina, you have to have a photo ID
Right.
that was given to you by the government.
Sure.
So I was wondering if like, are you in support of that, or is there
Yeah.
something that you would change to allow?
Yeah. I mean, so my optimal solution, right? And this is again just leaning on where I am ideologically. I think we're kind of asking the wrong question in a sense, because the real question is how do we get the government so small that voting doesn't matter, right? Like where
Yeah,
where 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 you're not going to be terrified regardless of which one of them wins, because they don't have really any power to screw up your life. I do think, when I look at it not through the lens of ideology, right? Because the ideology is how do you make the government so powerless that that voting doesn't really matter, especially federal and state level, right? Like I think voting in a small community or an HOA or something like that, I think is actually very valuable. But in these larger ones, I think that if we decentralize power enough, then it really shouldn't matter. I do think that the process should be easy, but from that standpoint, it's hard to argue with just kind of the basic reality of the situation. And I don't want to sound like a Republican, and just like on other issues, I don't want to sound like a Democrat. But the reality is we need an ID to do freaking anything in this country. I think that's a problem. There's so many things that we need an ID for that I don't think we should need an ID for. But we have an ID for all of these other things that are basically essential to live. like it's possible, but to say that you need it for all of these things and not for voting, it just makes you wonder, like, really? Because the same people who are like, you shouldn't need an ID to vote, if you were coming at me and saying, well, you shouldn't need an ID to vote, but you shouldn't need an ID to go buy cigarettes, you shouldn't need an ID to hop on a plane, like at least I could see some consistency in thought process. But when someone's coming out and saying, oh, you shouldn't need an ID to vote, but I want you to have an ID for all of these other things, it's hard for me to take that seriously. I think that it should be, if you're eligible to vote, it should be easy. It should be easy. We shouldn't have barriers. But the reality is, especially in a system where we're almost $36 trillion in debt and thinking about economic incentives, there is an incentive to cheat in every single election. Whether it happens or not, whether it's secure or not, the reality is there is an incentive to cheat. I think. Would you agree with that there is an incentive to cheat in every election, from town commission all the way up to president? Would you agree that there's an incentive to cheat?
I wouldn't necessarily say every election there's an incentive, but I would say like at least for an individual, I would say there's an incentive for the party. Because if this party controls this city, that means this city is more than likely going to vote for this party in the higher elections. And I feel like that's where the incentive lies for the parties to try and get people to.
See, I view it just as if the outcome, right? Because when the whole reason we vote is to place somebody in a position of power, right? So naturally, each individual would, based on their own preferences, worldview, all of these different things, they may have a preferred candidate. Whether they prefer that candidate for a legitimate reason or whether they were lied into supporting that candidate, whatever the reason, but the incentive is there. So when I look at it on a bigger level, when you understand, that the legislators are the ones writing the laws, the executive branch is the one kind of enforcing those things. I think an incentive says, if you're a rich person, right? You got $1 trillion, right? You're the richest person on planet Earth, $1 trillion personal net worth, all cash. And you look at it and say, hey, this politician is going to take half my money. The other politician is going to leave me alone and not take any of my money. I think that you have created a massive incentive for that individual to cheat. Specifically, if you're planning on taxing them at 50%, you've created half their net worth's incentive to cheat, because through this mechanism that grants powers, favorable positions there, and it can be true at like your local town commission on whether they approve a real estate development or not, right? Where if you had a hardline town commissioner who's like, no, no new building, and you got another one who's like, yeah, build away, and you're a real estate developer, like whose campaign are you going to contribute to, right? Like the incentive is there. So then it just becomes a matter of, if the incentive exists, because incentive alone is not enough to create cheat, right? Like you can have an incentive to cheat, even if it's $500 billion of potential economic output. But if there's not mechanisms or ways to cheat, right? Like if it was a cheat-proof system, which there's not a ton of cheat-proof systems, but I would love to see us move to something like blockchain voting, right? Like where if we had blockchain voting, there are some things there where you just can't cheat. Like there's no cheating that system short of like bribing each individual voter.
Yeah.
But institutionalized cheating could be nullified with blockchain voting. So you
Okay.
have to have those things. You have to have the economic incentive to cheat, and then you have to have a mechanism that would enable it. So the question with voter ID, like I'm not opposed to it as long as it's not being used in a way that is voter suppression
Yeah.
or things like that. Like I think it should be easy, but I'm not really opposed to the idea that if you want to vote, that you should have to at least prove um, that you're eligible to vote. How that is, I don't know because I I don't really trust the system or view any of it as legitimate,
Yeah.
which is weird to say, but it's true. Like I don't know if eh,
I would agree though with
yeah.
what you were saying with the cheating aspect with you saying it in that way because now you got this person saying you're trying to take my stuff that I worked for, and now that I have it, you want to take half of it and just give it away.
Yeah, I mean, people would be willing to bend on ethics when you're threatening them. Like,
Yeah.
like someone who normally wouldn't cheat. It's like, oh, wait, so you mean I could bribe, if I were to bribe these five people, I
I get
won't
to
lose
keep
a
my
half a
stuff.
billion dollars
Yeah.
and it's only going to cost me 10 million to bribe them? Like,
Well,
then it becomes, what's more important? Like that's where the real ethical test comes in. And sadly, I think that a lot of people don't really value ethics and morality as much as everybody else.
what do you think about the canvassers that are getting paid like 20? Because I got a call because I applied for a job a while ago as like a part-time thing before I started working on the libertarian campaigns. Um, I got a call back from them and they were offering me like 23 an hour for 8-hour days, part-time. I could choose what days to fit the schedule of my other job, and I'm just like, isn't that technically them buying my vote? So like, because in my opinion, it's like if it whether it's the Republican Party or the Democrat Party, they're paying me $22 an hour to sit here and pass out papers saying vote for these people. And I feel like that would also somewhat give me an initiative to be like, you know what, since they're paying me, I'm gonna go vote for them.
Sure.
And I was just wondering about your opinion on that, and if
Yeah,
you also feel like that's a form of cheating as well.
I mean, that's one of many forms of cheating, right? Like, I mean, you know, when big tech censors, that's a form of cheating. Like if you owned Facebook, right? You're Mark Zuckerberg, and you wanted to influence the election, and you made and you have data, right? You have big data, so you can probably identify who the Republicans are, who the Libertarians are, who the Democrats are, who the Greens are. You probably can tell that from the data there. And if you were to, for example, on election day, 6 o'clock in the morning before the polls open, you send a push through your app to every single libertarian, go vote, and you don't send any to the Republican or the Democrat. Is that cheating?
Yeah, okay, I see what you're saying there.
Like there's so many ways to cheat, which is why I just say we're fighting over what I argue is a distraction. And that's why I kind of bring everything back to localization, nullification, and shrinking the size, scope, and power of government. Because as long as the government has a monopoly on violence and an ability to take our money and do whatever the hell it wants with it, that will be attractive to immoral people. That
Yeah,
power vessel will be attractive to immoral people. And if those immoral people have the money and the means to cheat, why wouldn't they? Why
yeah,
wouldn't I mean, why wouldn't they? Are they just going to say, "Oh, here's a great opportunity to seize this power and get all these things that I want"? Oh, but that would be wrong, so I'm just not going to do it. For a lot of good people, that's enough. I'm not going to go out there and cheat the same way I'm not going to go out there and lie. I could lie to voters and tell them things that I don't believe in because I think, because I may think that it'd be popular to them.
yeah,
I'm not going to do that. We get enough of that from the Republican and Democrat. I'm going to tell you the truth. Even if the truth is something that you 100% don't want to hear, and I know it's going to guarantee that you don't vote for me. It's the truth. I'm going to tell it to you. Um, and that's why I might, maybe I'd be less libertarian if I thought that there was another mechanism for controlling this beast. But $36 trillion is a heck of a lot of financial incentive
Yeah.
to cheat. And I think that the best way to ensure there's no cheating is to really make sure that there's no reason to cheat. And the only logical, plausible way I can think of actually accomplishing that outcome is taking away power. That's it. Like, if you take away that power, then there's no reason to cheat. Because even if
Yeah.
you cheat and you get the guy you want, well, if they can't do the things that you want because that decision's being made at the much more local level, to me, that's better. And that doesn't even fully solve the problem. It really doesn't. Like, even if we decentralize and push the power all the way down, but now instead of buying a few people at the federal level, it's a lot harder to bribe the town level, the commission level of like 100 counties, right? Just thinking North Carolina, my race,
Yeah.
right? Where, I'm sure someone could bribe Robinson or Stein and get some executive action that just that one individual that you could control could push that through. But if you decentralize and push all that power down, you now have 100 counties. At a minimum, you got to bribe 100 mayors, right? Probably their town council and everything. So it makes cheating more difficult the more you push it down and
It
decentralize.
would make them spend more money.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Um, for the last question that I have written down is, um, because I've been asked about this a few times as well. Let's say you win the governor, but Shannon doesn't win lieutenant governor.
Okay.
Do you think that that would kind of hinder being able to do stuff? Because I've noticed here lately with the lieutenant governor and the governor arguing over, I think it was the hurricane. It's kind of like slowed down progress of actually helping up there.
Yeah, I think that's partisan gamesmanship. The reality is, if I'm the governor, I could end the war on drugs in North Carolina single-handedly without the legislature. There's nothing that the lieutenant governor or anything else could do about that. Um, honestly, the lieutenant governor kind of is a job that doesn't really do anything. If you read the North Carolina Constitution, I joke about it. I think it was in Tennessee, but a libertarian ran for lieutenant governor, and they were a one issue campaign, and they ran on the one position of abolish the role of lieutenant governor. They ran on it because it's like, here you have here you have a job that when you look at the constitutional authority, right, they basically oversee the North Carolina Senate, and that's about it. They sit on a couple of boards, but they get a nice big fat salary. They get staff that we're paying a nice big fat salaries for, and it's largely a symbolic job. Like they don't really, the lieutenant governor doesn't really do anything. So I think if the people of North Carolina elected a libertarian governor, that in and of itself is enough of a mandate um, that I don't think having um, Weatherman or Hunt would be any sort of uh, any
Hindrance.
sort of challenge. Yeah,
Yeah.
I think.
Aren't they really only there to, like, if there's a tie within a voting, the
Yeah.
lieutenant governor will then step in and be like, I go this way, and
Yep.
then that's
They
all they're
tie
going to
break in the
do.
Senate. They tie break in the North Carolina Senate. They sit on a couple of different boards, like the Board of Education and a few different boards that they're appointed to that they chair. But it's largely a ceremonial position. It has no real power.
Just
So
a quick way to get quick money.
yeah, I mean, we're certainly paying them good salaries, right? Like, I mean, based on the filing fee for lieutenant governor, I think the lieutenant governor gets like almost 200 grand a year, um, but they
Oh,
don't really
dang,
do
I might
anything.
need to run for lieutenant governor now. Oh, okay. That's interesting. I didn't know that though about the I mean I knew they did the tie breaking, but I didn't know that there was really nothing else that they did.
Yeah, yeah. Take a look at the North Carolina Constitution. It's funny, like the way it lays it out. It's like they have basically like one or two job responsibilities. That's it. Like, and the
Hmm.
two job responsibilities that they have, it's the tiebreaker in the Senate. Well, if the Senate's not tied, then
Then
There goes one of the two jobs.
you're literally just getting $200,000 just to sit around.
Well, I mean, look at both of my competitors, right?
Yeah.
Mark Robinson and Josh Stein are both collecting big fat checks at our expense and have been doing nothing but campaigning, not doing their jobs, right? Like Josh Stein was out there campaigning when Joshua Aurora was writing a letter to him begging for help, right? Like you're the AG. Do your freaking job, man. But instead, we have these long, 2-year long campaigns and these public officials who are there collecting the big fat taxpayer checks are out there raising more money and campaigning. And to me, that's just a symptom of the cancer of American politics as I think of it.
I, actually, that kind of makes me think of like uh, I would say like have you heard of Jeff Jackson? I'm assuming.
I have been at quite a few campaign events with Jeff Jackson. Yeah.
Okay, because
He actually knows my name. I was surprised at the last event. He walked up to me. He's like, "Hi, Mike." I'm like, "Oh, I'm surprised you know who I am." But yeah,
well, yeah, because I think you've got a bigger following than you realize. Uh, but with
we'll
Jeff
see. We'll
Jackson,
see soon enough.
hopefully, with Jeff Jackson running for attorney general, because I heard people complaining about that too. It was like, uh, why is he running and when not doing what he needs to do in his district? And but my thing is from my understanding, he got uh, gerrymandered out of his district.
Yeah, but he still has the job now. So like he's not going to win re-election because they gerrymandered his district into a very Republican district, which is why he's not running because he knows he can't win it as a
Yeah,
Democrat. But that's one of the problems with politics, right? Like I made a decision, and it was a tough decision, but when I won the primary, I realized that there were only certain things I could do. I was running a small business, I had clients, and I had my day job, and I realized that if I am going to campaign and travel the state and do all of these things, I would have to either hire someone to do my job for me, right, and put that aside, or I would do a bad job, right? Like things would
yeah,
fall through the cracks. Like there's only a certain number of hours in the day, so I'd have to make up for that some way. That's a big problem with politics. Like all these politicians who are running for office, like I know running a campaign is a lot of work. It's something that you're thinking about most of the day, every day, and the fact that the politicians in many cases have 4-year terms and they spend two of them campaigning, like I know that they are not like they're not doing as good of a job as they could have done. If they have wonderful staff and support and all these things, maybe they're still doing a good job. But if they weren't campaigning and they were dedicating that same time, energy, and resources that they're spending campaigning to doing a great job at the job they were currently elected to do, I think the people would be better off. And that's just not the norm. The norm of it is we have these 2-year cycles. So halfway through their term, it all focuses to let's get reelected. So you get 2 years where they're fully invested with their time and energy into it. Then they go off to campaign, and you have 2 years, half the term, where their job is either hopefully outsourced competently to staff, um, but it shouldn't even be that way, right? Because the taxpayers are then hiring the additional staff. Like the taxpayers just get screwed in this whole thing, and the
yeah,
incentives exist. Um, the incentives exist that's what they should do. Like if they could, I can tell you right now, if I didn't shut down my company and put more time, I wouldn't have been able to campaign. I wouldn't have been able to do as many events. I wouldn't have been able to put as much into the campaign as I could. But I don't have a big fat taxpayer funded check coming in, so I had to make an actual calculation and decision on my own that the Republicans and Democrats don't actually have to make because they can collect a big fat taxpayer check, not do their jobs, and still campaign.
yeah. I was gonna say because it's with you going to different areas in North Carolina, it definitely seems like, at least social media wise, it seems like you have done so much more to go out and actually engage with people. Because I feel like that all that Josh Stein's going off of is I'm your attorney general and I'm a Democrat. Vote for me. And then Mark
Yeah.
Robinson's going
Well,
based off.
he's not even going on that. He's going on Mark Robinson is evil. Vote for me. That's Josh's whole campaign, and it's funny. I didn't like either of them, but like I've kind of gone back and forth. Like who do I dislike more as a politician between Robinson and Stein? And this is just insight that they'll only get here. But um, I think Josh Stein recently took over as the one that I like least. And it was because it was an event that I went to, and it was me, Wayne Turner, the Green Party guy for governor. Then it was Jeff Jackson and Mo Green, right? And Josh Stein was listed as tentative. Now, to put you kind of in the room, this was in Durham. It was a big event put on by One Wake, and it was 6 different organizations, largely progressive faith-based organizations like United Methodist Churches, but 1,200 people in the room, okay, in a hotel convention center, 1,200 people. We were invited there, faith leaders on stage. Like this was the biggest crowd that I was before this campaign season. And you would think that this is a pep rally for Josh Stein, right? This should have been a pep rally for Josh Stein. All 1,200 people there. If Josh Stein came in there, smiled, said a few things, answered the questions the way they wanted them to, which Jeff would have or Josh would have answered them the exact way they wanted to. I was the only one who said no to any of their questions. And then I used nuance to explain why it was a no. But here it is, 1,200 people, something that these politicians, any politician should love an opportunity to speak to 1,200 human beings in a room. Big, small, doesn't matter. That's worth going to. Jeff Jackson even joked about, oh, wow, you guys really have, I hear plenty of people say they're going to have 1,000 people. You actually have 1,000 people. Josh Stein sent a representative instead of showing up. That representative read a letter addressed to the wrong group. It wasn't even addressed to this 1,200 people there. So his representative gets on stage, just reads a letter. And to me, that sums up Josh Stein's campaign. He cares so little because he thinks he has it completely locked up that he won't even go to a pep rally friendly group of 1,200 people who ideologically align with him and grace them with his presence. To me, that hit me as like, it just rubbed me the wrong way because
I think it's because he's just saying that people are going to vote for him based on party, and I don't even think, and I think this goes to Mark Robinson too. I don't think they care. I feel like their opinions on it is not every vote matters, and that's also why I liked your campaign a lot, is because it seems like, and actually when I donated, I got a handwritten letter from you. Which I feel like with you doing that and going to all these events, no matter how big, how small, going to all these different podcast groups, no matter how big, how small, you care because you feel like every vote counts, whether it be 5 extra votes or 50 extra votes. And I think that says something to you or about you as someone who could potentially be in a high office in North Carolina.
We'll see. I mean, I can tell you that both the Democrats and the Republicans would love to have me. I have heard from both of those parties, you should be a Republican. You could win and get elected as a Republican. You should run as a Democrat. You could win and get elected. And I'm just not going to. Like I truly
that goes against your principles.
Have disdain for those two parties. I think that those two parties are responsible for destroying this wonderful country. I know that sounds negative, and I know that I usually run it, but I truly believe that those are two of the most destructive forces for liberty to ever exist, and that they are actively harming every single American, both parties.
Because
to my core, I believe that.
One thing when I was going back to when I was at the election areas, the person that was talking to me about, there's no chance, no hope for a third party. What he was basically saying was, why not create a caucus within the Republican Party and basically do away with the Libertarian Party, but have the Libertarian caucus within the Republican Party? And I was like, in my opinion, that kind of just goes against like what you've been fighting for and like what all these other third parties have been fighting for, which is more ideas, and it shouldn't be based on party, it should be based on policy and accomplishments and things and whether you're capable to do the job or not. And
Well, so my thing there is that one, like it already exists, right? The Republicans have a Liberty Caucus. I actually have a friend who was one of their vice chairs, and he's very small L libertarian. He's a little too Republican on a few issues compared to for my taste, but great dude. But that already exists. But when I look at the real, because that was the argument when you rewind to like the Occupy movement and the Tea Party, and you kind of saw both the right and the left railing against the same kind of enemy there. And I think that really scared the regime. But you look at what comes out of that, and the reason that I am so adamant that I'm only going to do this as a libertarian is because if you do it from within the major parties, even if you rise up and win through their primary process, you and get elected, right? Even me, radical ANCAP, libertarian, I'm elected as an R or a D. It's not a mandate. It's not a mandate. Like the reality is, okay, this person got here because we've seen it, right? You look at in the Republicans, right, where you've got the Tea Party that came up, and there were a few of them, the House Freedom Caucus, all of this. The reality is, whenever a big vote comes up, then it comes to funding the military-industrial complex or something like that. They're like, hey, see, we're okay with liberty people. We've given you some spots, but whenever it comes down to it, the uniparty establishment comes down, like the reauthorization of the AUMF, like the FISA warrants, like anytime something big comes, when they grow within that movement, it's like you become this small thing. And on the left side with the things that the Democrats gave to the progressives, right? And you have the Squad, that group that's there. Like they have those seats, but they have no real power. So if I went into the Republican or Democrat Party, get in there, get into the place, I'm now just a cog in that machine. And even if I'm that dissident voice, right, staying true to principle every time, even if I'm like, I don't care that you're my party, I'm fighting back, you still have no real power. However, if you win outside of that system, right, because we come November 6th and somehow the statistical improbability, as I like to put it, happens and 2.7 million people check the box next to my name and I'm the next governor of North Carolina. To me, that's far more powerful than if I did it as an R or a D. Because what that says is that what I ran on, the things that I said, not the things my party or anything else. If I win governor of North Carolina, in a couple weeks here, that is a mandate to move forward my agenda, and no one can argue that. One, just the raw probability element of it. But I think that lets me go in there and immediately come out there and do everything I could, right? Immediately end the drug war, starting with the daily pardons, right? All these ones where you're like arresting a kid for a dime bag of weed. You throw out pardons every single day, they stop enforcing for that, right? So you do that one. And then I immediately hop on the bully pulpit every single day. 2.7 North Carolinians voted for this. We need a free market education system. We need to empower and enable teachers to go after there and compete with the system with sole objective of providing the best possible education. We're able to go there, all the issues, right? Transparency. It becomes a mandate on the platform, where if you do that from within the system, it's far less of a mandate. They're like, oh, you were carried by Trump, you were carried by Harris, you were carried by, if you do it from outside the system, it becomes a mandate. And that to me is someone who thinks that the only real goal should be shrinking, decentralizing power. Like that's the core thing. If there's one thing I could accomplish, decentralize as much power and control as possible, as low as we can get it. I don't think that Republicans or Democrats will ever do that, even if you have a candidate who wins in their party with that being the issue, even if they're just as passionate about that issue as me. But if you get anybody, it doesn't matter if it's me, it doesn't matter if it's Wayne Turner as a Green, or Vinnie Smith in the Constitution Party, who are the other ones on the ballot. I think if any of those outside of the two-party system win, they have way more power than if they would have won in those parties. So that's kind of my thought there, is it becomes a mandate. And that's why I won't join those, even though I know it would be a heck of a lot easier to do it
Well,
in either party.
from the way you're saying it too, that would also send a message to the RNC and the DNC and for them to be like, oh, now we got to get our shit together
Well,
because they're
that's where
clearly
I said
tired of it.
I didn't hit on it, but a lot of people have asked me kind of what are the things that it would take for Mike Ross to run for governor in 2028. Um, One thing that I'm pretty sure of that if we don't hit this particular goal, I don't know if I would do it, mainly just because I think my efforts would be better focused if I can't reach this goal with this race, with what I did this time around and the environment. I think that my efforts would be better spent locally. But if we could get 5%, that's my goal at this point is 5%. If we could get 5%, that's the first check mark as far as things that would need to happen for me, Mike Ross, to run for this North Carolina governor again. If I can't get 5% in this environment with things here, with the things that we've done, because I mean, I've traveled pretty extensively throughout the state. As you touched on, there's not a podcast I've turned down, friendly, hostile, so anywhere in between. I'm going to go tell the truth to anybody. I'm accepting events, right, left, center. I don't care. We've done the door knocking in certain places, phone banking, text banking. I've even got some radio ads going right now, not a ton, but I've done a little bit of all of these different things. And with the combination of what's going on in the broader partisan structure, I think that, Robinson's implosion should help me. That should get me an extra percent or two. And at least the data of people that, like, when that dropped, a lot of Republicans have reached out to me. Oh, I'm voting for you. So if I wasn't able to get 5% this time, I don't know if I'm the guy in 2028. But if I do set the record this time, then it becomes my goal is how do I put the team in place, get the volunteers, build the network, take all of the things I've learned from this time, where in 2028, kind of that drop off goal where, where this time it's, if I don't get 5%, I'm not the guy to do this, right? Like I took my best stab at it. If I don't get the 5%, I'm not the guy for it. I think that if I get the 5% in 2028, the next thing as my next goal is 10%. Now I got to get 10% or I'm not the guy. But once you get to that level, and I do think if we pull 5% here, I'm going to spend the next 4 years campaigning, right? And that's something that they have to go to work. Since I made the choice as a private business owner to shut it down, I could just stay retired for the next 4 years and campaign. So then it becomes, hey, how do we do this where we can either win it or get 10% in 2028? Because once we're at 10%, what I would be really confident of is if I put out there, hey, I'm going to run again in 2032, I would fully expect to be getting calls from the Republican and the Democrat. What do we need to do to make you not run in 2032? And then it becomes, those kind of things, because that now we're negotiating from a position of power. And that takes us back to that philosophical question of, I don't have to be the guy to do the job. It doesn't have to be the Libertarian Party that gets the glory. If we get more liberty and better governance for the people of North Carolina, that's a win. I'll take that win. I'll be happy with that win. If I can do that running, not running, I mean, that's the goal that we're doing all this for in the first place. So if I can get the prize without having to participate in the race, I'll take it. I just don't think I just don't think that happens until you get in the 10-15% range, where they're like, oh boy, this, you got enough momentum that you could tip it in either direction. And that's why, the national libertarian is in a little bit of a weird place, but and I know there's probably some people in North Carolina libertarians who may disagree with me on this, but I mean, I think what Angela pulled off, and forget the results, but the idea that Trump and Harris would both come to libertarians and pander to us. Like, we didn't get Harris, but for the first time in history, like, a Republican presidential candidate came to libertarians and said, this is what I'm going to give libertarians. To me, we're winning when every election at every race, like, if a libertarian puts their name on the ballot for mayor, if the mayor candidate for the Republican and the Democrat are calling up that libertarian, what can we do to make ourselves more libertarian? That's winning, man.
Oh yeah.
That would be winning if we could get
The,
there. And obviously Biden at the time didn't show. He was invited. I would have loved if Biden would have accepted and seen what kind of pandering the Democrats would have given to libertarians, right? Could we get them on record saying they'd end the drug war and other things where there should be alignment? I'm not opposed to that kind of pragmatic strategy. I actually think it's really good. My personal issue is I just can't believe Trump. I
yeah.
just don't believe him. Like he said a lot of things that I like in this. I just can't believe him. But part of me does say, even though I'm voting for Chase, like he at least came and offered us something. The
Well, I
Dems
mean
didn't
that
offer us anything.
I'm saying that it's big because if I remember correctly, this is the first time that a former president and major presidential candidate, and then you had Kennedy from the independent side that also came.
Yeah.
And then you had the all the other libertarian candidates that were running for the presidential position.
It's
So like to me that was huge for the fact that we're being acknowledged that we're now growing to be a force
Agreed.
that
There's a
is
lot of
scaring them
libertarians
enough.
giving Angela shit over that, though. There's a
Yeah, it's
lot of libertarians giving Angela shit over that. And I'm in this campaign where I'm focused on my race. I'm going to sit back. I'm a partisan. I'm promoting libertarians. I'm working for libertarians. But as far as my consensus on, was this a good thing or a bad thing? I, I guess part of me has to say, well, I'll have to see. If Trump gets elected, if he frees Ross on day one, if he appoints a libertarian to his cabinet, like if those promises that he delivered, even though I don't believe him, like I don't believe him, he didn't win my vote with that.
yeah,
But if he wins, and I do think he's certainly put in more effort to win libertarians than Harris has, for sure. He at least made the effort. If he does that, puts a libertarian on his cabinet, fulfills all of those things that he told us that he would do, I will be the biggest person singing Angela's praise at that point and say, look, you may not like the strategy, you may not like how it went down, you may not make all of this, but look, we just got the Department of Education abolished, right?
yeah.
We just got Ross Ulbricht released from jail when the establishment of both parties wanted him to rot forever. So
And then with
I'm
him,
cautiously optimistic now at this point because I don't know if it'll work and I don't believe Trump. But if he wins and he pulls that off, I will give Angela a big hug and say thank you for actually moving the needle to liberty in my lifetime. So
well, and then also with him also talking about taxes, abolishing certain taxes, like the tax on tips and income taxes. I mean, that's like a big libertarian move right there to helping people be able to save their own money for stuff. So
it
that way they're not living paycheck to paycheck or not being able to do nothing and just work all the time,
yeah, I mean
you know?
he's said enough that as a libertarian, if I could believe Trump,
Yeah. No,
like
yeah.
like if I believed he would actually do all of those things, he would have my vote.
Yeah, no,
Truly, even with Chase running against him, like just based on the fact that it's probably going to be Trump or Harris, like that's just the reality. Just like it's
yeah.
probably going to be Josh Stein in my race. But um, you know, if I could believe him, he probably would have won my vote. I just don't believe him, because he fooled me once. In 2016, I voted for Trump. I've said this plenty of times on one issue because he wasn't running as a libertarian, but that idea of draining the swamp, getting those corporate lawyer lobbyists out of the policy making decision, these that in and of itself would have been enough for me to vote to give a communist 4 years, right? Like I don't care about those other things. Like that's enough of a win if we could just break this one leg in the stool.
Like
That was
this
a
is
win, but he didn't
yeah.
do that. So how do I believe him now? You fooled me once. You got my libertarian vote. Now you're going to come pander to me. Well, you didn't do the things that you pandered to me with last time. So why should I trust you to do the things you're pandering? So
Yeah.
I can't do that. But I know there's a lot of libertarians who I think will vote for Trump. And all I can say is I hope he proves me wrong. I hope if he does win,
Yeah.
I hope everything he promised the libertarians at the Libertarian Convention he delivers on. And if he does, Heck, I may get out there and publicly apologize and say I should have voted for him at that point. I don't know. Um, but I know that Harris has done nothing to attempt to win my vote.
Well, actually, I think she went backwards with it too, because I think in a recent interview she was talking about Twitter or X now, and saying that Elon Musk's time is up for something, and then saying that since he's not censoring or the speech
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and then she turns around and says that the First Amendment is a privilege, not a right. I mean, that also is like one of the things that almost got me to vote Trump, but I still ended up voting Chase. Was because now it's starting to sound like we got someone who's now no longer who didn't cater to the libertarians for a reason, because I don't think she cares about the libertarian vote.
No.
And she wants to take, because now she's talking about taking away the First Amendment
Yeah.
and censoring people more on the internet and stuff like that. And it's
Yes.
like I don't even know what you're doing at that point.
Yeah, to me, the funniest thing, like as a libertarian, because I haven't voted yet, and where I stand right now, my plan is to vote for Chase. That's where I am right now. Wherever it is, I plan on doing civil disobedience. So my ballot's going to be public record because I'm either going to take a picture of it or I'm going to do a live stream filling it out, and just break the law on it and tag the State Board of
Oh,
Elections. Because Susan Hogarth's fight is
didn't didn't Susan get in trouble for that as well?
so yeah, she did a ballot selfie during the primary, and the State Board of Elections went after her, but a federal judge just granted an injunction. And it's rather it's really kind of interesting because the federal judge directed the Wake County prosecutor not to bring charges if Susan does it again. So effectively, Susan has government immunity to break that law
Well, I
this
mean,
in the November election. Like a federal judge has ordered a prosecutor not to prosecute Susan Hogarth, which I think opens it up where any North Carolinian should stand on that now, post their ballot, and dare you to come challenge me. Because how are you going to grant immunity to one citizen and not another?
but like my thing is too is like, why is it illegal? So I can understand that it's not public record because they don't want to put it out there.
Right.
But if like you or I want to take a photo and be like, this is who I voted for, I'm proud of it, why can't we?
Yeah, I agree with you. I mean, I argue it's speech. I understand their thought process, right? Like their thought process, but that's one of the evils of law is you plan for you create law based on these hypotheticals and you don't realize that they infringe on other things. Because I mean, the thought process behind it, right, is let's say that um and thankfully my wife, if someone tries to take this out of context, my wife would smash them and end this statement. But let's say I was like an abusive husband, right? Who beat my wife and was just an awful, horrible human being. And I told her, you go vote the way I want, or you're going to be getting the belt kind of thing, right? Like that's the idea behind banning it,
Well,
right?
the only other
Is
thing that I can
to
think,
prevent coercion or vote buying, or to use a different word. If I say, hey, I'll give you $100 if you show me you voted for X. So they take that's
yeah,
the thought process, but
I was
I don't care.
I was gonna say that's like the only thing I could think of too is like, if you vote for so and so, I'll give you $20 or $100 or something.
Yeah, bribes or
Um,
coercion is it bribes and force are the two things that they claim to
I
be
mean,
stopping.
they're already doing that with paying people $22 an hour to go out and be like, vote for Kamala Harris or vote for Donald Trump.
See, they can do that, but we can't. That's
Yeah,
just to touch back on equality
yeah,
under the law again. They can do that. Regular people can't.
yeah.
But that's the spirit of it. I just don't care. At the end of the day, I am an absolutist when it comes to the Bill of Rights. An absolutist. I am a free speech absolutist. I think there are horrible things that people should never say. The worst things ever. Like you should never say them. Um, but to say that you can't say them is the problem because it violates the First Amendment. Like we should
Yeah.
be able to take the most abhorrent, evil ideas and challenge those ideas with better ideas. And really the only people who benefit from censoring speech are governments, in my opinion. I really think that they're the only ones who can truly benefit from censoring speech, which is why they keep trying.
Well, I mean, that's why they were trying to, I feel like they were trying to ban TikTok is because when TikTok came out, there are a lot of videos of soldiers talking about why it's so crappy being a soldier
Yeah.
during these times. And now that it's banned, or they're trying to ban it, I feel like it's because they're trying to censor that voice from them saying it's crappy working for the government unless you're a politician.
Yeah, it's pretty cushy as much as they're complaining, I'm sure Mark Robinson and Josh Stein are both perfectly okay with working for the government.
Oh yeah, no, yeah, they definitely are.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it's 3:53 now, so is there anything else you'd want to say before we get off here?
Yeah, I mean, just if it's closing, right? If this goes live before the election, if you like what you heard on this, I am the Libertarian candidate for North Carolina. You can learn more about my platform at firetheuniparty.com. And if you were tired of this two-party system, if you're tired of being divided, and you want to vote for someone who stands very specifically against this system, please vote for me on November 5th, Mike Ross for governor. The larger percentage that we have, the more we will scare this system. And again, if we can get to 5%, that's the first step that would get me to run again. And the longer we're in this and the larger we grow, the more power we have in making this two-party system bend towards liberty. So yeah, thanks so much for listening. Hope it was a good chat for you guys. I know I enjoyed it. So.
I had a lot of fun.
We'll unpack concepts with clarity. Listen in for a critical gaze on the world around us in the present day. Welcome to our